and you have someone who's monitoring you on the webcam. So we don't know if they're collecting this data. We don't know what they're doing with this data. We don't understand why it is such a requirement for me to have my webcam on while I'm working. They also, for some companies, they ask you to install software. It is a requirement that you install software. But then, this is a monitoring software, but it switches itself on the moment I switch on my machine, not when I start working. And then for some of this software, you can't even uninstall it from your computer until you format your laptop or you format your computer. So what is this data that is? Is it being collected? Why do I have to install this software? What is going on and all this information? So we are requesting for or asking for transparency from the companies to understand like what they're doing with this data and whether it's being collected and how it's being used. We go to data minimization. So platforms or BPO companies should only provide workers with the data strictly necessary to complete tasks. Equally, platforms or BPO companies should only collect worker data that is strictly necessary for the performance of their contractual obligation. And then irrelevant or excessive personal information should be filtered out or anonymized. I think that speaks clearly for itself. Professionalism and integrity. So in terms of quality and accuracy, so workers should complete tasks with diligence, accuracy, and attention to detail. I think this for most workers is second nature because there's a very high threshold of, especially in Kenya, we find that we are working on projects with different countries, but then we have a target of 95% for the whole team. So if you're not on 95% accuracy, you're taken off the project. But then you find in other regions it's at 75%, in other regions it's like 60%. So due to the conditions or the situations that we find ourselves in, we find that most data annotation workers have very high accuracy and attention to detail. Platforms and BPO companies must provide adequate training, resources, guidelines, and where necessary, infrastructure to support high quality work. This can be tied to fair pay because for most projects actually you're told, hey, we want you to have a degree, we want you to have a laptop that is Core i7, it needs to have high specifications, you need to have this level of internet. But then you look at the pay that you're receiving and it's not even commensurate. You can't even be able to afford to pay for internet despite working 20 hours for 6 days. But then the amount that you receive is not even enough just for the internet that they require for their work. So it needs to be commensurate. And then also they need to provide the facilities for that. You don't need to give me a laptop, but pay me enough to be able to pay for the wear and tear that my machine receives. I can be able to pay it off over time, things of that nature. And then honesty and fair practice. So fraudulent behavior such as using bots or intentionally submitting incorrect labels is prohibited. I think this goes to the workers. And then workers must be treated with utmost fairness and trust, and then guilt must not be assumed without due process. Yeah, we have cases of people just being terminated for, you just wake up and you don't have an account anymore, or you get to the end of the month and your contract is not renewable. But when you try to reach out to the company and ask, hey, what was the offense I did? But then they never have a response. It's like, we did our own internal audit and decided that you no longer have the right to work for us. So what does that entail? So you want transparency and honesty and justification as to why I've been removed off of our project. And then respectful conduct. So harassment, discrimination, bullying and hate speech shall not be tolerated in any form. And then platforms and BPO companies must have clear and enforceable anti-harassment policies and training. I think that is clear. And then we move on to accountability and dispute resolution. So we have worker feedback and appeals. So transparent and responsive system must exist for workers to appeal unfair rejection or withheld payment, and then report violations and misconduct anonymously. On this, we have one of the biggest employers who pulled out of Kenya. And what would happen is, I have worked for a whole week, and then I get to payday, and then my account for some reason is just suspended. So you get a message saying that, hey, your account has been revoked, you no longer have access to this, but then there's no system to dispute. You cannot dispute there's nothing that you can do. If your account is closed, it's closed. It doesn't matter if you had thousands of tasks that were pending. It doesn't matter if you had made money that week. It doesn't matter, it's just gone and it's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes you find that some tasks have been labeled as paid, but you got $0.00. But then whenever you try to file a ticket to try and dispute that, you find that there's no response. But the moment you say that, hey, there's a certain button in the tool that is not working, you get almost an immediate response. So you can see it's very intentional in terms of how the platforms are taking advantage of people by not giving them access to dispute or try to get access, for example, to accounts as an example. We move to the next. So it's auditability and record keeping. So platforms and BPO companies must maintain clear records of task instructions, review and rejection reasons, and payment tabulation. And then workers must have access to their own performance and payment histories. As I said before, you just find that you're off-boarded. You don't know what you violated, you don't know what you did wrong, and there's no place where you can go and ask for, why did you off-board me off the company? There's basically no explanation and no reasons. But if I could keep a track of my performance, then I would know that, hey, this is where the issue is, and this is where maybe corrections must be made and such. Next, we have rights to explanation and correction, as we've been saying. So workers must be given detailed and actionable feedback when a task is rejected. And then platforms must allow for the resubmission or correction of work rather than outright rejection where possible. The next one, we move to environmental and social responsibility. So you have sustainability in AI development. So companies must minimize their environment footprint by using energy efficient tools and responsive hardware disposal methods. I think that speaks for itself. And then next we have local and inclusive economic development. So platforms and BPO companies should invest in the long-term growth of data workers by offering upskilling, digital literacy and AI awareness programs, prioritizing hiring from communities underrepresented in tech, and recognizing data workers as strategic partners and not disposable labor. For this, usually you find that I have been working at a company for 7 years and my pay has never increased. There's no avenue for promotion. You're just working and then, hey, I've been doing this thing for 7 years, but then you bring someone totally fresh from somewhere else. Because, for example, I think we were actually in a meeting and someone actually gave a good example where they said, I have been working for a company for 7 years, but then even when applying for a job at a different place, they can't give me a recommendation letter. But then in other industries and other companies, people actually get recommendation letters, and those are the ones that they are using to, for example, come and get jobs at the AI companies where they are importing people from different places, but then the worker who's been there for years never has a chance to go up or get promoted. There's no upskilling, and then when they are done with you, they just tell you to leave. So yeah, we would like to have upskilling opportunities, access to digital literacy and AI awareness programs. Next, we move to governance and enforcement. So first part, oversight by a multi-stakeholder body. So we would like to have a neutral representative oversight committee. It shall be formed, composed of data workers and the association, legal experts and ethicists, and then of course representatives of the platform and BPO companies, because we are trying to make it conducive isn't the right word, but yeah, accommodating to everyone. We want something that the workers feel that this is good for us, the companies feel that it is good for us, and then it is acceptable according to law. And this body will monitor compliance, it will investigate complaints, and it will recommend improvements. And then we move on to violation and remedies. So violation of this code may result in warnings, platform suspensions, or public reporting. Legal action in cases involving violation of rights or compensation where harm is ascertained to have occurred. We move on to the next, where we have periodic review and adaptation. So this code shall be reviewed annually by the oversight body to reflect any relevant legal and technological changes. And then incorporated the lived experience of workers and ensures it remains relevant, worker-centered, and enforceable. And then adoption and commitment. By endorsing this code of conduct, individuals and organizations commit to building a just, ethical, and inclusive AI ecosystem, one that values and protects the people whose labor powers it. Note, the term workers in this document refers to all data labelers, annotators, and content moderators working in platform-based and BPO settings. Thank you. Where's the MC to ask questions? Am I just going to it? Okay, does anyone have a question, a comment? Okay.
Thank you so much. It's always exciting to see this kind of work coming to a reality as this. I have a bit of some comments, but because of time, I won't get into so much details. Let me ask just 3 of those. One is, was there any reason why you thought of incorporating the EU directive on data protection? And if this code of conduct, it's supposed to cover Kenya, and how is the EU directive going to be implemented in Kenya? That is one. Secondly, is there a reason why, in terms of surveillance and monitoring, you explained it quite well, but it didn't get captured in the clauses where you were explaining more on surveillance and monitoring. And I feel like that's quite an important issue that should be captured very well on its own clause, which would be quite significant. And thirdly, in terms of the clause of harassment and discrimination, can you consider adding all forms of harassment and discrimination rather than just harassment, to just include that aspect of all forms of harassment and discrimination? And also, is there an opportunity to also add violence in that? Because I know that we have a convention, an ILO convention that we've been pushing in Kenya to be ratified on violence and harassment at the workplace, and then that would really capture a lot more than just harassment. And I think there was also something else on anti-harassment policies, and I was wondering, why only anti-harassment policy, but also why not anti-discrimination policy on the same, or discrimination, anti-discrimination policies. So those are just my 3, but I think there's a lot to comment on in terms of the presentation, but it was very detailed. I know that is in the afternoon and it's getting late, but I feel like there's a lot of conversation that this can really bring out, but I'll just stick to that.
So it is a work in progress. So we are looking, it's why we did the stakeholder engagement. So like when we talk about harassment, maybe we are thinking of it as a blanket term, but that will be rectified. It can be added just to make sure that it covers all scopes. Most companies operate in multiple countries, and therefore, even though we are trying to do this for Kenya, we're also trying to look at it like multinationally. So we are trying to figure out, how to make this document hybrid, that it can also be adopted by other people in other countries. We are borrowing it from, I don't remember what it's called, but there's shoemakers, I believe, in Vietnam or something, where they actually went to the employers and they lobbied them in such a way that, hey, these are the conditions that you need to provide for workers. So it came from, regulation, No, not from regulation, but more of the supply of the work.